Hey, everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome after a 2 week gap there. Real life comes in sometimes. Bob had back to school night. Work is killing me right now. So I'm spending a lot of evenings working on work that I couldn't finish in the office. So it's a lot going on. And Sean's been ill. Nothing bad, but, he's just been sick. And I was hoping he'd pop on tonight. I didn't hear back from him. So, Sean, hope you're doing all right.
Mhm.
And, I saw Calvin's on. Calvin, Sean sent me the picture. You went out and saw him at his place of work. Uh,
Nice.
so that was nice. That was good. And Digmeister, I read your message here in Ted Knight's voice from Caddyshack. So it was great. That's great. Um, anyway, let's see. Anything happened today in Saints news? I mean, my Twitter was just dead. There's just nothing going on. They just cut down to the 53-man roster, and people. I think they traded somebody. Somebody named CD Deuce, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You know, what happened with this? What happened with this, Bob? I mean, this kind of hit like the Jimmy Graham trade back in 2015, as far as attacking social media and people questioning why and what happened and why did this happen. What are your
You know
thoughts?
the fan reaction to Chauncey Gardner Johnson getting traded was very similar, to the way Facebook and a growing Twitter population reacted to Jimmy Graham at the time. For me, I was blindsided by Jimmy Graham. I mean, I knew he was unhappy with his money situation and being classified as a tight end rather than a wide receiver, and all that stuff. But I did not see the trade coming.
Yeah.
Chauncey Gardner Johnson, although I wouldn't have been brave enough to predict it. I also wasn't the least bit surprised.
Mhm.
We heard from Jeff Duncan that Chauncey Gardner Johnson, his representatives, and the team were at least $4 million apart in their contract ideas. Folks, that's $4 million a year. And I know Mickey Loomis is a cap wizard, but yeah, the Saints have a lot of things to address in the next year and a half. And yes, they have salary cap room now, but they've kicked the can down the road. They won't have that luxury next year. They're going to be juggling like crazy again. Uh, Gardner Johnson's coming into the last year of his contract, as mentioned. Uh, he he wasn't going to hold out per se, but there were rumors. And I stress the word rumor because they've been unfounded up to this point, to my knowledge, because I've looked. But there were rumors that CD Deuce was no longer listening to coach's instructions. Was not going full go in practices. Yeah, again, shades of what we were hearing about Jimmy Graham. Back in 2012. I guess that was what, 2014, right? 2014,
2014,
2015.
2014 is when he got the contract.
Yeah.
2015 is when they traded him. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, very similar shades. But folks, you look at this from a football aspect. I mean, I know people are defending the move, saying, "Well, business is business." Look at it from a football aspect too. This was the right time for the Saints to make a move like this. Yes, there are very, very few defensive backs in the NFL that have the versatility of Chauncey Gardner Johnson. But the Saints are very much set at cornerback with Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo. You now have a very solid number 3 with Bradley Roby, who can cover the slot. You have a deep safety core with Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, and PJ Williams, all able to cover deep safety or the slot. And there are two things that I think clinch this for Mickey Loomis and probably Dennis Allen. A, Justin Evans has been playing out of his mind this preseason.
Hmm.
He's been playing like a starter. He's not going to knock May or Tyrann Mathieu to the bench, but the Saints feel very confident that they could go to a nickel package and plug a guy like Justin Evans in there and really not lose a beat. That's factor number one. Factor number two, Marcus May had a DUI hearing at the beginning of the week. That hearing got pushed back to November. So similar to the Alvin Kamara situation, it's looking more and more likely like Marcus May will not receive he's going to be suspended, but that he will not receive a suspension in the 2022 season. Those two factors, I believe, made the Saints, Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen say, you know what? We're not going to be able to sign Chauncey Gardner-Johnson after this season. It's pretty clear to us. Let's get what we can for him now. We have the depth in the secondary. This is still a very, very good secondary without him, folks. It really is. Just a little bit thinner, but still very good depth. And I think it's very telling that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was traded not only to an NFC team, but a team that is on the Saints' schedule this year. And the Saints only got 2 day 3 picks out of it. To me, that's what I'm unhappy with, is the compensation. But that tells me that there weren't a whole lot of takers for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, because they looked at his contract demands. They probably, in situations like this, other prospective teams talk to this player or talk to their agents and say, in the case of a pending free agent, hey, what are you going to be looking for? And when they got word back, it's obvious that the trade interest for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson could not have been that deep.
Yeah, and one of the things that stood out to me, we didn't even talk about Adante Taylor, who's going to probably eventually become that nickel back.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a warning sign back when he was drafted. We all assumed, okay, they're drafting him to play safety. No, they were Dennis Allen said flat out, he's going to be a cornerback. So we automatically assumed, okay, that means the handwriting's on the wall for Paulson and Debo.
Or Roby,
right. But Debo had a lights out training camp. We never saw Taylor much in preseason. I don't think we saw him really at all, if I think about it. But, like you mentioned, Evans coming in and having the kind of camp he had and playing the way he played in preseason shows he has no ill effects from his injuries that he suffered while with Tampa. Yeah, knock on wood. And you're seeing a second round talent play safety. I also found it interesting that, when Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins both retired, there was no real talk about moving Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to either the starting safety spots.
Nope.
They immediately signed Marcus May. So now who's going to play the other safety spot? And most of the talk was around guys like PJ Williams. Who's going to be? Are they going to draft a safety? Mm-hmm. Then they signed, of course, the Honey Badger, and all that talk went out the window. But people all pretty much were convinced that, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson will never be a starting safety, but he's going to be a nickel back in this defense, and he'll probably stay a nickel back in this defense. Well, you don't pay a nickel back what the kind of money he was looking for, 12 to 16 million a year, I think, if not more. They're not going to pay somebody that kind of money. They're going to pay starting safeties, guys that are going to be on the field the majority of the time, that kind of money. So I think, I did see this. Calvin's putting this up. He erased all his Saints stuff on Twitter right before the draft. I forgot to mention, too, when the Saints were talking about getting Watson, remember the some of the compensation they were talking about throwing out there was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and people were really freaking out about that back then. I can see that, but
a little.
I don't know if he's quite Junior Gillette, though, because Junior Gillette had a lot of warning signs
in
that money. That's why he was undrafted free agent, but pretty close. Jimmy Graham too, and I'm a Jimmy Graham fan. I got a Jimmy Graham jersey on. I'm a Jimmy Graham fan, but Jimmy Graham was very disgruntled that he was not going to get the big money. But the last thing that really stood out to me about excuse me, about Gardner Johnson was um, what when you start bringing in different guys to play safety, and you're looking at this guy purely as a nickel defensive back. How long can he play that position on this team? At what point does he move to a starting safety spot or starting cornerback spot? He's not going to get a cornerback spot because he's not going to replace Lattimore or Debo.
Hmm.
So where does he go? You know what? Where do you move a guy like him?
And that's the rub to it. Yeah, again, there are very few defensive backs that have his versatility. Uh, but name me an area. Look back on it, Saints fans, even you diehard Chauncey Gardner-Johnson fans, and I've liked him since Florida. Look back on it and then get back to me and tell me where he stood. What one area told you that he was going to be an elite outside cornerback, an elite free safety, an elite strong safety. He's good at all of them, and his overall package, and so many things that he does good makes him a very, very good player. But name me an elite area of his game. Most can't. I can't.
He is definitely the product of. I can't say it this way because that's not accurate, but it's helped that he's in a defensive scheme that he's in here. Um, the thing about Chauncey Garner Johnson, and I'm a fan of his too. People overestimate his skill set based on how much fun he is to see
Mm-hmm.
him out there in the field. And we can go to the Weems issue with the Bears pulling a mouthpiece off all the way to the picture that's on the show for previewing the show tonight of basically standing in front of Tom Brady who's getting shut out 9-0 with his arms folded, and he's about 6 inches shorter than Brady,
Mm-hmm.
looking up at him like, now what? He is, well, and I told you this off the air, he is essentially the fan. If the fan, and I say that as a generic group, but the fan could become a player and play on the field, they would be Chauncey Garner Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
talking shit to other players and backing up their shit talking, you know.
Yep.
But um, it's that's what makes this hard that he's going. The compensation sucks. I give you that. We didn't even get what we paid for him to draft him. We didn't even
Yeah.
get a first round pick. Compensation sucks, but it's tough that um, we have to separate that emotion of how much fun it was to watch him play versus how good of a player was he really for this team, and how easily replaceable is his skill set. You start looking at players on this team and you think about their skill sets and how important they are. Um, Demario Davis, how easy is it to replace his skill set? It's not. Marshawn Lattimore, Cam Jordan, um, you know, Ryan Ramczyk. People like to think Michael Thomas, but really Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. Those are the guys you want to pay a lot of money to. Those are the
Yep.
guys who do a lot for your team. Chauncey Gardner Johnson's skill set isn't to that level. He's a good player who fits in a good scheme
Mm-hmm.
and very fun to watch. And I think that at the end of the day, you have to kind of look at him from the standpoint of, am I going to pay this guy this kind of money because he's a lot of fun? And how much is fun? I'm not going to do it. And somebody, I think Calvin posted it a minute ago. Um, you know, the the Saints are going to make a commitment. They're going to pay Marcus Davenport. People can get pissed off all they want, um, but they're going to pay Marcus Davenport. I heard in the preseason. I wanted to talk about this last week. We never got a chance to. But in the preseason game, I think it was against the Packers, they asked Ryan Nielsen, Chris Richard, and Dennis Allen who was the best defensive player on the roster, and they all said Marcus Davenport. And people are like, "Are you serious right now?" But he is to those coaches. That's how they
Yeah.
evaluate talent. So, and the hard part is that Davenport doesn't stay healthy, and
Right.
that's what makes it tough. Um, it's I, the people. I can hardly wait for this contract to come out. We're going to hear it over and over and over again about how much money they're going to pay Davenport. But they really feel like if they can get over this injury bug with him, they've got an elite player, probably the
Hmm.
best player they've ever had to deal with. So that also was factored in this Chauncey Gardner-Johnson decision. Um,
Absolutely. Not to mention the fact that you have a borderline elite interior offensive lineman and Eric McCoy.
mhm.
You have David Onyemata coming up for a deal. And let's not forget, if Jameis Winston has a good season, they're going to have to pay Jameis Winston a lot of money.
Yeah.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was the last priority
Mhm.
on that pecking order. You're looking at a player like Jarvis Landry on a 1-year contract. Where if Michael Thomas doesn't come back in beast mode, you got to keep a player like Jarvis Landry around because that's who's going to fill the Michael Thomas role. And we could go on and on. They're going to have to pay a running back too, some decent money.
Yeah.
To be a compliment to Kamara, because I believe anyway this is probably Ingram's last year.
Mhm.
Uh,
It's
if he,
amazing.
what's that?
Speaking of Ingram, and talking about players getting older and stuff like that, we don't think much about the 2011 draft because outside of Ingram and Cam Jordan, it really falls apart after that. Martez
Right.
Wilson, guys that just did not make the cut. But, those first two picks, those first two first rounders, you know, you have the all-time leading Saints rusher in Mark Ingram, and he's going to add to that total this year.
Hmm.
And the second thing you're going to probably break it this year, the all-time Saints sack leader in Cam Jordan. Two players in 2011, the first round 2011 pick. So you almost can throw out the rest of the picks. You wish you
Yeah.
could have gotten something more out of some of those other picks, but those two players there, it's like they're two Saints Hall of Famers.
Hmm.
NFL Hall of Famer is debatable. Less so for Ingram, more so for um, uh, Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan
Right.
is definitely should be in the consideration for the NFL Hall of
Hmm.
Fame. Um, but that's an amazing feat to pull that off.
It
Um,
absolutely is. I mean, if you blindfold someone, and point to, or if you take the players that your team gets from any draft,
mhm.
and you take all your knowledge about those players out, and erase what rounds they were drafted in, and drafted in, and you say, out of 6 players or whatever, 5, 6, 7 players that your team drafted on a given year, you're going to get 2 all-time franchise greats.
Mhm.
That's a pretty darn good draft.
Absolutely. Um, Somebody was talking about in a chat I was in, the 2017 Saints draft and the players they got out of that draft class. Did you Is there another draft that's comparable, not just in Saints history, but across the thing? And I said, in Saints history, it's hard to pick a draft that's comparable for the as few picks as they had. I mean, the '81 draft, you had 15 picks, I think. There was 12 rounds, so I think you had 15 picks because you had two twos, because you got Russell Gary and Ricky Jackson in the second
Mhm.
round. The '86 draft class was another one. You had multiple picks, multiple third round picks, because Swilling, Ruben Mays, Barry Word all came in the third round. I think maybe
Mhm.
Finnerty too. I don't remember if Gill was third or fourth rounder, but
I thought he was later, but I'm not
yeah,
sure.
I don't remember off the top of my head. Um, and then the 2000 draft, the 2000, because you had with no first rounder, but you got Darren Howard, you
Mhm.
got shoot, I just drew a blank on that class. I'm sorry. I know the player that we didn't keep. That was a good player. That Mark Bulger,
Hmm.
on and play for the Rams. He was in the 2000 draft, and then of course the 2006 draft.
Right.
Where that was kind of the foundation for the 2009 team.
Hmm.
So you really got some. You've had these great draft classes, but as far as hitting on every round, because even the guy we took in the sixth round, defensive lineman from Miami, Muhammad.
Muhammad.
Yeah, he ended up. He's still in the league. He's
Yep.
still being kicked around and stuff like that as a player. But I mean, you just look at those. How many Pro Bowlers you have in there, how many All Pros you got in that first round. Um, the only thing you can compare it to is the NFL Hall of Fame draft class, the '74 Steelers,
Hmm.
because you got Swan, Lambert, Stallworth, and Mike Webster out of that, four NFL Hall of Famers. I mean, you can't top that.
Yeah,
And,
and then
and
you add in Donnie Shell,
yeah,
who came to the team as an undrafted free agent.
yep, absolutely. Um, yeah, I know, and a
We'll
lot of
see.
people feel that way, especially because they have our first rounder too next year. So that bugs me more than anything else. That they have
Me
our
too.
first rounder, honestly. I know a lot of people think that we're going to be able to get our first round pick for Peyton. I'm not so sure. It's not that I don't believe Peyton's a good player, I mean, good head coach, and he may coach next year. I just don't know what the compensation is going to be. But
Right.
yeah, Eagles fans are going to always talk shit no matter what. It's not until they lose to the Cowboys and they end up not in the playoffs and they start talking shit about their own players and their own
Yeah.
team. So that's what's enjoyable about all that. Um, but yeah, the other draft class that really, and I hate saying this, but the other draft class that comes to mind, I told them, is the '75 Cowboys Dirty Dozen.
Hmm.
The big names out of that draft class were Randy White, Manster, and Hollywood Henderson, the linebacker. The rest of them were a lot of role players on the team that really helped that team first off go to three Super Bowls because they went to Super Bowl in '77, they went to it in '78, and they went in '75 with that rookie class.
Hmm.
Um, but it was the core of Doomsday too.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of the players that made up the Doomsday defense of the early '70s had retired by '75. That's why they thought it was going to be a rebuilding year, especially players like Bob Lilly. Cole hadn't retired yet, but some of the original linebackers from the Doomsday defense were retiring. Um, so, John, just jumping on. What did I miss today? Nothing much. Nothing.
Nothing.
Um, yeah, Anna, we were telling about that, and you'll probably see it in a replay. Yeah, there is more to the story. One of the things that I've been reading, and Nick Underhill has said it, and even I have to give a shout out to Andrew Juge. He was the one that took a lot of heat when he just threw it out there on a Saturday morning. But basically, that there were a lot of undercurrents about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson not listening to coaches, kind of tuning out everything and kind of half stepping it through practice and everything, letting this get to him, you know. Um, let's talk about the final 53 and surprises. And Calvin keeps bringing him up. Alex Leatherwood got cut by the Raiders today. Um, do you think Alex, and in only 1 year, he was a 17th overall pick in last year's
Yeah.
and he got cut faster than we want to cut Ruiz.
Right.
He's an Alabama kid, so I know that's why Calvin keeps bringing him up. I mean, would you kick the tires on Alex Leatherwood? Try bringing him in, see what he could do. Our boy OJ Howard got cut too.
Alan, I'd bring them both in. First of all, I wanted to sign OJ Howard when he first hit free agency.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's focus on Leatherwood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we know at the very least that Trevor Penning is going to miss most of the season. I
Mhm.
think he's going to end up being put on season-ending IR. But yeah, at the very least, they're going to start him the season on IR. See how he progresses. But you're not if we're lucky, we'll see Trevor Penning on the field shortly after Thanksgiving. That's the way it's looking right now.
I think so too.
James Hurst is a totally adequate left tackle. You and I both agreed on that, leading up to the draft. But if something happens to Hurst or something happens to Ramczyk, they're in a hell of a lot of trouble. I know the coaches like Landon Young. I could see why they like Landon Young. He's a real versatile kid, good feet, but wildly inconsistent. And outside of that, there's zero depth at tackle beyond him. You feel pretty confident with Throckmorton having to step in for somebody inside. As long as Ruiz comes along, if something happens, knock on wood, to McCoy, Ruiz can slide in at center. Throck can slide in at right guard. So, you still have a couple interchangeable pieces, but offensive line depth is extremely scary. So, yeah, I would absolutely bring in Alex Leatherwood. And for those of you that tried to make the correlation, well, Marone coached him at Alabama. He did not. Marone was only at Bama 1 year last year. By that time, Leatherwood was already for the Raiders. But Leatherwood played tackle in college. He started out his NFL career at tackle before being moved at guard, and he's just flamed out. You're not talking about. He's still a guy that would be on a rookie contract. Whatever guaranteed money he's making would still be paid out by the Raiders. So yeah, I'd absolutely bring him in for a look. And I would expect the Saints to kick the tires on a few offensive linemen in the next 2 or 3 days for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about Alex Leatherwood. I liked him coming out of college. I don't know what happened with him at the Raiders. He may be somebody who's got bad feet. I don't know, which is why they put him inside, because that's really the difference. You really have to be a dancing bear if you're going to play outside. You have to be able to really pick up guys who coming off the edge and stuff like that. And Galvin's right. They're not looking for a guy as a starter, but you're looking at somebody who has starting experience.
Yep.
As a depth player. So if Hurst gets hurt and Penning is not healthy, you have somebody that can at least come in there and do something. This is a team, or even have him as a third tackle. As on power running position plays and things like that. So I definitely want to give him a shot. OJ Howard. The story I'm hearing out of Buffalo is O.J. Howard just never recovered from his injuries, and he moves like an old man. I would hate to hear that, but that's what I keep hearing out of Buffalo is that's what was wrong with him. And it's funny. Yeah, you're right. It's the Raiders. The Raiders now have become my textbook because Mike Mayock, of course, was a draft guru.
Right.
NFL Network telling you who the good players were, who were the bad players, and he was Mel Kiper's, NFL Network's Mel Kiper. And you now have Todd McShay. You've got all these books that come out and all these draft gurus that come on and start telling you about all these great players. And somewhere Vince Tobin must be smiling. Because he was right. His mailman knew more about drafting players for an NFL team than the Mike Mayocks and the Mel Kiper Juniors and all these other people because we're seeing this. Mayock could not build a team. He got all these high draft picks and could not build anything. Yeah. Yeah, I heard about his RAS score.
Yeah.
That's relative athletic score. That's something that Jeff Ireland really believes in.
It is.
How athletic a guy is. So that would indicate that he must have pretty good feet if his athletic score is that high. But if he can't figure out the game, if he's not coachable, then that's a problem. So we'll see. I'm interested to see if they make an attempt to sign him. or at least bring him in. Can't be any worse than Charles Brown. We brought him in,
Right.
second round pick.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, you look at, and I know we'll get more into the 53 in a second, but you look at their offensive line now. Hurst, Pete, McCoy, Ruiz, Ramczyk. They're going to be your starters.
Mhm.
We already talked about Penning. We talked about Throckmorton. Outside of that, you have Landon Young. Their ninth offensive lineman is undrafted rookie Lewis Kidd, who has had a solid camp, but like the rest of the backup linemen, looked absolutely putrid in preseason games. That's where they're at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame too because you watch that Charger game, and Penning really looked good
He
in
did.
that opening drive. I mean, you could see he caught a lot of crap in that first preseason game, but to me, I saw a tremendous leap from that first preseason game to that third preseason game, as far as his knowledge and understanding what teams were doing to him, and not letting players and plays stay in his head. And he really was just wiping people out. I mean, if you want to see what was going on in that running game, why that running game was opening the way it was, a lot of it had to do with Penning. And I really got upset when I saw he got hurt, because I wasn't too happy about starters being out there anyway.
Right.
I was just like, at that first drive, I'm like, all right, get everybody the hell off the field. That's great. We got to see, Olave catch a pass. We got to see, Landry catch a couple of passes. Ingram scored 2 touchdowns. That's great. Get the hell off the field. I don't want you get hurt in this game.
Lauren, my wife, was laughing at me because I was streaming the game in the corner of the living room. I don't take over the living room until the regular season, so I was streaming it in the corner of the living room, and but I had the volume up, so she heard, and she heard the Saints score a touchdown, but then I dropped like 4 F-bombs consecutively, and she looked up and she goes, didn't the Saints just score? And I said, yeah. I said, that's not it. She goes, but you don't care about preseason games, who wins and loses. And I go, somebody got hurt. And I just left it at that. And she knows my tone by now. She knew not to press any more questions. So she just stopped asking.
Well, when I saw him on the cart with his sock off, I went, damn it. Because if he just would have walked off on his own power, I'm like, okay, he got rolled up on. He's all right. But, yeah. That's the old inadvertent whistle. They're supposed to let the play go, no matter what, and then go back and make a decision. Was he touched? Was he down? And that was one of those things where I honestly didn't see it happen because it's a preseason game. I'm not watching very closely. I'm doing other things while the game's on. I'm listening, but I'm not really watching. And I had to see the replay to see what happened. I'm like, what's he doing in the end zone? What's going on? What just happened? And Tre'Quan Smith finally made a good play in preseason. He fell, and on the replay, you could see the ball never touched, and it's almost like he threw it up. It really was. But that's that inadvertent whistle where they blow the play dead, so everybody stops running. It happens. It happens. But that was a really freak thing. So I saw the count. I saw the roster. Tre'Quan Smith did not make the team. They kept 5 receivers because I've seen somewhere he does make the team.
He did make the team. I was right. They did keep 6 receivers.
Okay.
I was wrong because I said all along that of those 6 receivers, Deontay Hardy, Marquez Callaway, and Tre'Quan Smith will all not make the team. Yeah. As of right now, they are all still New Orleans Saints. Hardy didn't surprise me, especially when they released Rashid Shaheed.
I call it the rash that won't go away, but we'll call it an STD.
Callaway. Callaway, to his credit, had a solid ending to the preseason. And he has the added value of special teams. I thought for sure, like I would have bet a sizable sum that they would have kept Kirk Merritt, who vastly outplayed Traquan Smith, not only in preseason games, but consistently in training camp. They released Kirk Merritt about midway through the day. And as of we sit here right now, Marquez Callaway, Deontay Hardy, and Traquan Smith are all still New Orleans Saints.
It's a shame because, of course, Kirk Merritt is from New Orleans. He went to Destrehan High School. I don't think my wife taught him, but everybody in Destrehan knows who he is, and they all know him. And and so it's really a big deal that he is doing what he's doing. And I have no doubt he's coming back to the practice squad,
unless somebody else snatches him up.
Yeah,
that's the issue,
right? I don't. Yeah, that's true. And I would not be surprised to see Traquan, because I think he separated his shoulder on that play. I think that's what it was. I don't know the exact injury, but I expect Penning to come back on recallable, IR, and that could open the door for a guy like Alex Leatherwood if they could get him. Traquan, I don't know. Traquan, they could very well put him on IR and do an injury settlement and waive him.
They could.
It depends on what happens. Anybody else other than Traquan Smith that surprised you, that made the team, and guys that you kind of wish didn't make the team and were upset that somebody got cut?
The defensive version of Traquan Smith, Zach Bond.
I knew he was going to come up at some point in this conversation.
He had to, because my mind, just like I was telling people all day, I've been predicting that Traquan Smith would not make the team, but I won't actually believe it until it happens, because I think I'm fairly convinced that he has scandalous pictures of somebody in that organization. Zach Bond, I'm beginning to feel the same way, and this is the position that I cannot wrap my head around. Bond barely played the last half of training camp and preseason because he was dealing with injury. Before that, he made a couple plays early on, and then just like last year, just like the year before, as practices progressed, he looked more and more and more lost. And he's just not a fit for this defense. I understand the special teams value, but you can't keep everybody for special teams. Nephi Sewell was waived. Chase Hansen was waived. And this is the mind-boggling part to me. Eric Wilson and John Bostic were waived. Yeah. Bostic was coming along, but Wilson, I thought, had a solid core of preseason games, especially in coverage. You could take good news, bad news scenario out of that. The good news is that has to mean that Pete Werner is coming along, and he did dress for practice today and yesterday. But even so, the depth at linebacker, we're right back to where we were immediately following the draft. The depth at this position now scares the hell out of me. Because the linebacking core as we sit now, DeMario, obviously, Werner, Caden Ellis, good on early downs, do not want him in coverage. Zach Bond and Andrew Dowell, who the coaching staff also loves. Chase Hansen, no. John Bostic, no. Eric Wilson, no. Sewell, no.
I was very surprised to see Zach Bond make this team. Because I really thought the problem for Bond is he's a man without a position on the team. He's not a linebacker. He's a tweener defensive end, and he's undersized for a defensive end in the NFL. He's good. You can make him a defensive end, in college, because his speed makes all the difference, and he's not going up against huge guys, all pros every week. Even the worst offensive tackles in the NFL are better than most of the offensive tackles in college football. He is a man without a position. If this was a true 34 defense, he probably would have a shot.
Agreed.
As an outside linebacker, but he is a smaller, slower version of I can't believe I just forgot his name. Number 97, replaced with Pat Swilling.
Ronaldo Turnbull.
Turnbull. He's a slower version of Ronaldo Turnbull.
Yeah,
Small.
that's a good call. That's a good call.
Turnbull was a good pass rusher, not that great of a linebacker, not that great playing the run. That's why they're moving back to defensive end, having just rushed the passer as an outside defensive end. Yeah, you're probably going to see Ian Book in the practice squad. We had said this a couple weeks ago. Ian Book, my feelings for him were that they weren't going to keep. I agree with you, Bob. They weren't going to keep three quarterbacks on the roster. They needed too many other positions that they couldn't waste a third quarterback. And Taysom Hill is your third quarterback. Your emergency quarterback in a game. If something happens to Winston and and Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, you can always play Taysom Hill at quarterback. Yep. I have said throughout training camp and as soon as Dennis Allen says, "Oh no, all he is a true tight end," I don't buy that argument because he is too good at other positions for you not to use him. And I think that's why he wasn't going to be a quarterback anymore.
Exactly.
Because, you want him as the up back so you can run the punt fakes. You want him as a running back. You want him as a receiver. You want him as a tight end, H-back kind of guy. And you want him to come in and play quarterback for short yardage situations. Run that RPO. And he's going to do that. And the first time he comes out there and does that, and it doesn't work, you're going to see fans screaming, "Why did you take Winston out? You disrupted the offense."
Right.
All the same things that we heard, But because as Black and Gold Review, I think is the B&G Review, he's a Southern Miss kid on Twitter, said the Taysom Hill plays are all garbage except for the ones that work. So, I mean, that's basically how it comes with Taysom.
And yeah.
When Taysom Hill gets that snap and runs that ball up the middle and nobody touches him or he carries the pile for a first down, then it's awesome. But if he gets stuck in the backfield for a loss or turns over the ball, whatever, it's trash. Trash play.
And Matt, I saw you. I think it was you, Matt, that put up Sorensen. When Alan asked about surprises, yes and no. I never expected Sorensen to make this team, from the start until they traded Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and then I literally laughed out loud, when I was doing the roster count, and I'm like, oh my God, Daniel Sorensen's going to make this team. He's gonna be one of the. If you had to rank the roster spots from 1 to 53, Daniel Sorensen is somewhere in the range of 52 or 53. He's going to be. When they sign a guy, all season long we're going to see Saints sign John Smith at this position. In a corresponding move, they waive Daniel Sorensen, and then if a guy gets hurt, Saints plays Andrews Pete on injured reserve. In a corresponding move, they bring back Daniel Sorensen. We're going to see Daniel Sorensen's name all year, but he's going to get, I hope, very, very few snaps.
Yeah. I expect him to play special teams primarily, and I expect him to be inactive a lot of games too. Because you're right. When Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was traded, that opened up a roster spot for him because I felt that Smoke Monday and Justin Evans were two guys that I was watching closely to see if they were going to make this roster.
Yeah, Bryce Thompson too.
Yeah. I thought, PJ Williams really solidified his spot. He was never in danger, never in a bubble situation. But, and then the Marcus May, the possible suspension does play into this whole thing. I mean, I don't want to see Sorensen out there. But if, let's just say, Marcus May is suspended, and I think Evans moves in to that spot. But, when you start looking at extra safeties that you may need to have, Sorensen probably gets a couple of snaps in big dime packages. in that kind of scenario. So, I would not be surprised to see him out there, but I expect him more on special teams than anything else.
Yeah.
But him and JT Gray both playing special teams, because JT Gray is the same thing. You know what he can do. He's not that great of a defender, but he's great on special teams. That's what you need him for. Um, yeah, I don't know if he does or not, but yeah, he he's one of those guys just will not go away. It doesn't matter how many players you bring in, how much talent you bring in. I thought for sure we'd only keep 5 receivers, and keeping 5 receivers, I'm like, okay, you're not making this damn team now. There's no way you're making this team with 5, and they go 6.
And Alan, I've swore all along that they were going to keep 6, and I still didn't have Traquan in the mix.
Because 6 was a lot for me when I was looking at the roster, because I kept thinking you're only going to keep maybe 5 active on game day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Only because Hardy is going to be your kick returner, so you really have 4. And I just thought that 6 was a lot to have somebody who's always going to be inactive on game day. Because I was doing the running backs. I had 5 running backs, so 5 running backs and 6 receivers. That's 11 players on 2 positions. And then they went 4 tight ends too.
Right.
That's a lot. I was keeping more depth. I think I was probably going overboard on depth at linebacker and at offensive line. They ended up keeping 6 linebackers. I would have thought they would have kept 7. But as you said, a lot can happen in the 12 days before the next game. There's a lot that can change in that time frame.
Yeah, and it will. And you already mentioned a couple possibilities. Penning is almost certainly going to go on short-term injured reserve at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Traquan might with that shoulder injury. We talked about guys like Sorensen, like Lewis Kidd, as being guys that Saints coaches Dennis Allen probably views as interchangeable. They'd be valuable in a pinch, but they're also expendable. I'll hold them for a roster spot, but if I have a chance to get player so and so, a Daniel Sorensen or a Lewis Kidd, or maybe a Nick Vanette or Adam Prentice, they're going to be one of my first cuts. So those are guys that are going to be rotating in and out and in and out and on and off the practice squad all year long. Next to the receiver situation and the linebacker situation, there wasn't a whole lot that surprised me. I thought Taco Charlton made a late run for a roster spot that made me start to think. I'm like, well, let's see here. Everybody puts a premium on pass rushers, and rightfully so. And I noticed that a guy like Tano Passanio was playing late into all 3 preseason games, and Charlton was getting early snaps. I'm like, okay, that tells me one of 2 things. Either they're showcasing Taco to try to move him, and that didn't happen. They ended up releasing him. Or Tano is kind of fallen out of favor, and Charlton has a real legitimate shot for a roster spot, and maybe they cut or try to move Passanio. Well, that didn't happen either. But I wouldn't expect it. We keep saying, Alan and I keep saying, this guy could be back for practice squad. That guy could be back for practice squad. Taco Charlton is a guy I don't expect to clear waivers, because somebody is going to grab him as a situational pass rusher. And folks, that's why he did not make this team. The Saints do not need a situational pass rusher. They need all of those defensive linemen to be interchangeable. That's why Taco Charlton was kind of left out in the cold.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that, because you could see it. You go through your defensive ends. Obviously Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport, your starters. Then you start looking at Granderson and Peyton Turner as primary backups. So where does he fit in this defense? And you really don't have a place for him. Even if you say, okay, well, Taco Charlton could be kind of like the Hendrickson kind of player, where he rotates in on passing downs and things like that, but he plays more special teams. how many special teams only players or specialists do you have room for? You know,
Right.
you're running out of players. I mean, special teams are important. I mean, you got a punter who just kicked an 81-yard punt against Green Bay. Uh, you know, and then of course Will Lutz is booming these field goal attempts. So you know, special teams clearly are important on this team,
Mhm.
but you run out of roster spaces when you have guys that are really good special teams players. It's always been, and Dennis Allen learned this from Sean Payton. It's about how many different things you can do on this defense
Yep.
or this team. Um, you've got to be able to play the starting role, your starting role primarily, but you also have to be able to do other things. And that's why I just don't, I just couldn't see where he could go. And I do expect him to get picked up by somebody. He may not stick around long. He's probably going to be
Mhm.
in the bottom half of their roster, but he's going to be picked up by somebody. He's a former first round pick. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, is anybody that you thought that made the Saints roster that you thought really this is a make or break year for them? Like this could be their last shot on this team.
Ruiz comes to mind. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't a surprise that Ruiz made the roster. And we all expected him to. You should have expected him to start too. But I do believe that this is Cesar Ruiz's last legitimate shot with the New Orleans Saints. If he flames out or doesn't show significant progress, the Saints are going to look to make moves at that position. So Ruiz is one. You got to believe Adam Troutman too.
Mm-hmm.
We keep hearing Troutman had a great camp, and from footage I've seen, that kind of backs up that statement. But again, Troutman fell well short of most people's expectations in 2021. And if the Saints do not get some kind of production out of this position, and they don't need it to be a Jimmy Graham or even a Jared Cook type of production, but they need something. If they don't get it from either Adam Troutman or Juwan Johnson, a tight end is going to be a huge offseason need. So Adam Troutman and Cesar Ruiz probably at the top of my list.
I would definitely agree with that. I think this is a make or break year for those guys. We talked a little bit about Mark Ingram. This is
Mm-hmm.
probably Mark Ingram's last year with the team. And it's not his isn't a case of he's a disappointing player. It's just
No.
he's an older player, you know. So yeah, that those are the guys I look at mainly as these are final years for them. And for Trotman, I don't expect him to make that step up. I
No.
think he's going to be what you kind of saw last year. He's going to be a guy who's pretty good on running plays, blocking, but passing downs, he's going to be a poor man's Josh Hill and not playoff Josh Hill. He's
No.
going to be the guy that drops passes at critical times and then he makes the spectacular catch on first down. And you're like, oh, okay, finally, we're going to see what this guy can do. And no, you're not. No, you're not. And he got hurt on that play. So, it's like
Yeah.
you see him limping off, kind of like the Tennessee game. He
Mm-hmm.
reached up, got that high pass, came down, and then you see him limping off. And it's like, oh, God, we can't get it. Caesar is, I feel optimistic because I saw the improvement out of him in the preseason games. My thing is, can you carry this over all season long? I don't think it's a health question for him. I think it's just you got to know what the hell you're doing and stop falling down.
Yeah.
He was falling down like a little kid, like a fat boy running down a Monkey Hill in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And Menem kind of got a hold of him, and then he just kind of tumbles the rest of the way. He's doing a pulling play, not a sweep, but a pulling play. And here he is supposed to come outside and pick off the safety or the cornerback coming in a blitz, and he misses it, and then he tumbles over himself. Mm-hmm. I can't stop myself, It's it's just funny, I don't want to see that anymore.
No.
Not without the cartoon sound effects, especially Tex Avery cartoon sound effects. Um, so we've talked a little bit about, guys, positions that we thought maybe I haven't seen. I've been kind of scouring the internet while we've been on the show. I haven't seen very much. Is there any big? And we talk about OJ Howard maybe, but has there been any big names other than Alex Leatherwood that has been released that you've seen so far? Hit the waiver wire.
Alan, I got to be honest. I mean, we were so busy with Saints news today, getting articles out and trying to stay on top of roster moves that I didn't really have a chance, to scour what other teams did. I know there's a couple receivers that did pop up on my timeline, like Tampa Bay released Tyler Johnson, for instance, and a couple other wideouts. But wideout is one of the last positions that are going to be on the New Orleans Saints needs list. So I would not expect it. I would not expect anything there. I know Sony Michel got released. Actually, there are a few running backs that hit the wire. Marlon Mack, Philip Lindsay, they're all available again. I'm hearing that the Vikings are seeking trade offers for Madison, their backup running back, who'd be a great fit in New Orleans if you're looking for a trade partner. If you don't feel comfortable about running back depth, you might see some names be brought in. Buffalo released Duke Johnson too. So that's another name at running back. There are a few quality backs now back on the market all of a sudden.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was looking for tight ends and see if anyone got released, and offensive tackles, which I'd have been shocked if anybody worth a damn was going to get released because, offensive linemen you just don't find quality offensive linemen just do not get released anymore. They just don't do that. They hold on to these guys. They hold on to mediocre offensive linemen. One interesting thing that I saw 2 days ago. What was it? Monday? Could have been Monday. Jimmy Garoppolo had his contract restructured, which I was not surprised because first off, San Francisco could not afford to keep him at that salary.
Right.
$27 million. Especially they're planning on starting Trey Lance, but they had no market for a trade partner. Just like with Baker Mayfield, no one's going to take a shot on a 1-year rental on a guy that you may not be able to afford. Do you think that well, let me back this up a little bit. I also read that his contract now has a no trade, no tag clause. So he's a free agent next year.
Yes.
Do you think there's a market for Jimmy Garoppolo next year?
Next year, absolutely. Because teams are always looking for quarterbacks. You never know, in this day and age, what marquee quarterback is going to want out of his current surroundings, and then all of a sudden open up a spot for somebody else. Aaron Rodgers, it may or may not be his last year. Tom Brady, it may or may not be his last year. So those are two big spots. Carolina, because next year will be a new calendar year. Carolina will be looking for a new quarterback again.
They did not sign Mayfield to an extension.
No, you're right. They didn't. So that seriously could be the case.
Yeah, and he got basically he was named the starter, but they're basically doing this rental, and they probably going to have a new head coach next year too.
Yeah.
Hell,
even New Orleans. And I don't think he will, but if Jameis Winston plays poorly, or he is the reason that the Saints do not make the playoffs, Jameis Winston will not be the New Orleans Saints starting quarterback next year. It's that simple, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if, let's say, Jameis Winston exceeds expectations and doesn't take the team to the Super Bowl, because then it becomes a no-brainer. But let's say he exceeds expectations, has a Pro Bowl year. The Saints they go one and done in the playoffs, though. But Winston's looking for a $120 million, $70 million guaranteed deal. And the Saints like, it's a little rich for our blood. We might
Hmm.
go somewhere else. So, yeah, there's scenarios where I can see it happening.
Yep.
Um, it's, yeah. It was if there's a market for Trubisky, there's definitely a market for Jimmy G. Yeah, you're right. You're
Very true. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not. I'm throwing that out there, but yeah, that is true. I mean, yeah. So I mean, to me, there's Jimmy G and Mayfield both. The teams that had the rights to them had to trade them away or do a trade because if they just cut them outright, division rival was going to scoop them up.
Hmm.
The Steelers were going to take Mayfield,
Yep.
and you look at what the Seahawks have. They've named Geno Smith the starter for now
Yeah.
until they watch him play. And then they'll go
Right.
back to Drew Lock, who I think threw 3 interceptions and a touchdown in a preseason game. So, Seattle would have jumped all over Jimmy G if they cut him. Uh,
Yep.
so, absolutely, there's always going to be a market for these guys. And I don't know how good this draft class is going to be next year for quarterback. I heard it's better than the one that just happened, but I wanted to mention a couple other things too. Len Dawson passed away last week. They announced, I think it was 2 weekends ago, that he was being moved to hospice care.
Yep.
87 years old. Played in the first Super Bowl. Won the fourth Super Bowl. Um, Won an AFL championship
Mhm.
with the Dallas Texans back in 1961, I think it was 60 or 61. They played the Houston Oilers, um, and that's the famous game where um, uh, Abner Haynes accidentally said, "We'll kick to the clock," and the wins were incredible. And
Mhm.
what he misunderstood Hank Stram's thing. He said, if we lose the toss, no, if we win the toss, we probably want to kick into the wind, but we want to kick towards the clock. And he totally misunderstood. They chose to kick in overtime, but the
Mhm.
Texans ended up winning that game. And I think it's a 1960 AFL championship because by 63 they had moved to Kansas City
Yeah.
because of the Cowboys. They had to move. Um, but anyway, um, yeah, Len Dawson, longtime host of Inside the. I was not at that game, John. Um, my dad was still in Japan in the Air Force, and my mom was still in high school. So no, I was not at that. Um, yeah. So, but I know about that from the full color history, the story of the AFL, the NFL film series, which I love that series on the
Me
AFL.
too.
AFL is just a fascinating league. But
Yeah.
the first time I really saw Len Dawson was in the old Inside the NFL back
Hmm.
when HBO first started showing these things. It
Hmm.
was him and Nick Bonacani would host the highlights, and that really was the way you saw the highlights of the week. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm a little too young to have seen this week in the NFL on a regular basis with Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire, but in the mid '70s, it became Inside the NFL, and that's what I used to watch all the time. And
Hmm.
the legendary Harry Callis would do the highlights, the
Yes.
voiceovers for the highlights. Longtime voice of the Phillies. So yeah, Len Dawson, and of course Len Dawson also was the person because it was Super Bowl 44, 40 years to after he won his Super Bowl as the Super Bowl MVP. He brought out the trophy for the
Yeah.
Saints Super Bowl win, and yeah, Len Dawson, very unique kind of quarterback too. Um, he um, he became the sportscaster for Kansas City.
Yes.
He'd do the games, and then he'd go and do the sportscasting for the. So he'd be
Yes.
practicing, have to go run home, change, shower, change to the 6 o'clock evening news, interview his teammates. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny. Um,
Can you imagine Jameis Winston doing that now? And running back, and Chris Olave. Do you think you could have helped out your quarterback a little bit more on that post pat, stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely. Len Dawson talked about, in fact, he said he kind of had to coach his guys how to answer these questions.
Right.
Sometimes they'd be too honest, and sometimes they had a hard time saying what they had to say. And I think it's just because we don't know. I think after the first two series against the Chargers, confidence was sky high because we're like, yeah, this is the offense is going to roll. We're going to do great stuff and all these other things. And now Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's gone. And you have these injuries that are happening. Michael Thomas has still got the hamstring thing. You're feeling like, maybe it's, I don't know if I should feel that confident or not. We have 12 days and we play the Atlanta Falcons. Bob, give a thumbnail sketch of the Falcons. We're going to pick on them a lot more next week. But give a thumbnail sketch of the Falcons. How do you think the Falcons are going to be this season?
I think the Falcons are ultimately going to be one of the teams in contention for the number 1 overall draft pick. Absolutely. I think this roster is that bad. There's some talent on it. I'm very interested to see the first round wide receiver Drake London. Kyle Pitts is a legitimate weapon. Make no mistake about it. Cordero Patterson. Atlanta is one of the few teams that have ever utilized Patterson right in his NFL career. But outside of that, they still can't protect the quarterback. They still can't run block. They still can't coach. And now, at least before, you had a quarterback in Matt Ryan that could get on a hot streak and really kill your team. I'm not worried about Marcus Mariota. Defensively, the Falcons did very, 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 very little. You want
to be your best player.
Yeah, but the rest of that secondary is still a mess. Mm-hmm. I said it earlier today. With Jordy Hultberg, I was like, and I count myself in one of these people. For those of you that are worried about the chemistry between Jameis Winston and his wide receivers, there is no more perfect team to open up the year against than this Atlanta Falcons pass defense. So I think that obviously with anytime you talk Falcons Saints, you throw all rules and records out the window. I get all that stuff, but I'm not worried about opening the season up against Atlanta. Like I said, this is just a bad roster from top to bottom. And you don't want to accuse a team of tanking, but this is a team that really is focused on a complete rebuild. And when you rebuild, you start at the quarterback position. They don't have an answer there. So until they do, it's going to be one of the bottom dwellers in the NFL.
Absolutely. Well, and I agree. And I like this. Sounds like my favorite Falcon team of all time. The Saints have not had a lot of success on opening day, and
right.
Go into the last couple times the Saints opened their regular season against the Falcons, and both times were at home. That's not this Falcon team. It really isn't. Nope. That's not to say this Falcon team, if you let them hang around, if you make them feel like they've got a shot, that they're going to give you everything they can and maybe pull a surprise upset. The important thing, and I'll talk about this next week too, the important thing is the Saints come out of the gate and just punch these suckers in the mouth and punch them hard. And suck the life out of them, as break their will. So by halftime, they're ready to quit, because you cannot let Matt Ryan's not there anymore. You have a more mobile quarterback in Marcus Mariota, and I'm worried about Marcus Mariota running all the damn plays because for some reason, even though we have Taysom Hill on this team, this defense is like the quarterback can run.
Yeah.
Especially when you play Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. Oh, I didn't know the quarterback could run. He's supposed to stay in the pocket, run it down their throats. And yes, we're two away, John. If we sweep the Falcons, we have tied that series. And when you think about that, being able to do that, given that from 1995 to 2000, we had a 10-game losing streak. We had a 10-game losing streak in the 70s to the
Yep.
Falcons. Um,
Couldn't win at Fulton County Stadium for what, yeah, 9, 10 years.
yeah, yeah. And when you think about that stuff, you just that's just incredible that Sean Payton was able to flip that like he did. So let's finish it because we've had a couple of times where we've been able to get close to tying this damn thing, and we lose a game. So now we have to wait till next year to tie this
Yeah.
all series because I want to take that away from these clowns. I really do because I'm tired of seeing, but we still lead the all-time series. Man, you weren't even alive for the all-time series, so get out of here. You know. And yeah, the Saints did play the Falcons in '67. They weren't in the same division until 1970, but they did
Right.
play the Falcons in the '60s too. Yeah, so I really want to get this over with. And yeah, these first three games are critical for us to build up our confidence. You got two games on the road too. You got the Falcons and the Panthers. And honestly, I think the Panthers are going to be a lot tougher than we kind of thought.
I agree with that.
You know,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I think Matt Rule is dead man walking. Yeah, but you look at this roster, this Panthers roster, and I see them being competitive in every game. I really do. I think that if all things go right for them, this is a football team that can play around 500.
well, and you play the Panthers early in the season like this, everyone's still healthy. You know, Run CMC is not injured yet. So they week 2 of last year we got our heads kicked in pretty good
Mm-hmm.
by the Panthers, and yeah, we just can't have that. And that's the kind of game they like to build their confidence, especially playing in Carolina. Um, and that you're going to London the following week to play the Vikings.
Yeah.
That's not a divisional game you can overlook. I have no doubts they're going to be up for the Buccaneers at home. I mean, it's Tom Brady. You want to humiliate Tom Brady again. That offensive line is a mash unit.
Yeah.
They're losing people left and right. So I'd like to damage Tom Brady's brand new plastic surgery he got on his face, his Botox, and I think they trimmed some bone out of his jawline. I mean, his jaw looks weird.
It does.
It's pointed. You can see his cheekbones and his face is pointed now. I mean, much longer he's like Ultron. But yeah, I mean, so those are critical games to really get a jump on the division,
Mm-hmm.
and really get your confidence up. Because I said this a while back, but the heart of this schedule well, beginning with the Bengals game, but at the Cardinals, hosting the Raiders, hosting the Ravens, a team we've never beaten in our stadium, at Pittsburgh, uh, and then at the 49ers and at Tampa, and you have the Rams at home. I mean, that's a tough row to go through.
Yeah.
So you need to get those wins early. If you're 5-0 going to the Bengals game, that's a good feeling. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can see Baker looking like that. If the whole key is you take the running game away from the Carolina Panthers, you cannot let Christian McCaffrey. Even though, for the life of me, I don't understand why these things all have Christian McCaffrey rated as such a great back after his injury-plagued season, but they still do. So, that we'll talk more about that as these games come up. But I kind of wanted to bring up the Falcons because we're going to spend a lot of time on the next show just gearing up to deal with the Falcons, kind of breaking down the matchup issues. And as I look at this team, the matchups, every single one is in the Saints' favor. It really is.
Yeah.
the Falcons can't stop the run, but they make up for it by a crappy pass defense.
Right.
Those things. Um, so yeah. Um, Bob, you have your Bayou Blitz show tomorrow. Anything going on tomorrow?
We did have Quinn early scheduled, but Quinn texted me earlier today. He is working on a movie project, which I'm not allowed to divulge yet. So we because of his schedule, we had to push Quinn back to sometime in September. Brendan and I are going to be having the same conversations. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, roster decisions, early Falcons preview. Just a couple of guys talking football and hopefully having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep in mind, guys, there's no football this weekend, only college football.
Mm-hmm.
Because they wanted to give the Thursday night opener that whole week to prepare. That's why
And
they did.
I like that.
Yeah. So we have a full week off. 9/11 is the first home game, Thursday night game. I don't remember who's playing. It's the Rams and somebody. I don't remember.
Buffalo, I think.
Is it the Rams in Buffalo?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first game. If you got your fantasy football draft, that's good time this weekend to have your fantasy football draft. My daughter hosted people over here last Sunday, and it was rather amusing hearing the girls and guys draft players and stuff like that. And somebody drafted some poor girl drafted Rob Gronkowski. He's like, I thought he was good. He's retired, So, Calvin, I'm a cringe every time I see Traquan on their active roster. Useless bastard. You and Bob both. Yeah, I retired. I don't do fantasy football anymore. I would get way too emotionally involved, and I just can't do it anymore. So I'm good. I'm good. Meantime, thank you guys. Hopefully, barring any unforeseen problems, we'll be back on every Tuesday this year. For Sean, who is MIA, for Bob, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Do that.